Hello again everyone. I'm here doing another video and I'm giving you a basic overview of how to observe Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement in English. Now, the Day of Atonement is when the sins of Israel would be atoned for. This is spoken of in Leviticus 16, where the whole process is outlined. It's also spoken of in Leviticus 23, verses 26 to 32. And I believe also Numbers 29. Now what would happen is the high priest would take two goats and they would cast lots. One of them would be taken and as a sacrifice, and the blood would be taken and sprinkled inside the Holy of Holies. Then the other goat would have the sins of Israel confessed over it. The high priest would confess the sins of Israel over it, and it would be sent out into the wilderness, bearing away the sins of Israel. Another thing that would take place, and this is spoken of in Leviticus 25, verses 8 through 17. This would be when the year of the Jubilee would be announced. Every 7 years they would have a Sabbath year and they would let the land rest, and then every 49 years, or every 7 times 7, on the 50th year they would have a Jubilee year. And in this year everything was returned to its previous owner. The land that people had to sell or rent out to pay for things, that would be returned to that family. Slaves would be set free during this time. This was a year in which everything would be reset, basically. So now, what do we do? What do the scriptures say to do as far as our observance of this day? The scriptures really only give two things to do on this day. The word says to afflict your soul and to rest. Now, what does the phrase mean, to afflict your soul? If you go to the Hebrew, the word afflict here is the word anah. And the idea is to be put down, become low, to become depressed, to be afflicted, to humble oneself, to bow down. I believe that the idea being conveyed is just this deep sorrow, this deep affliction, this depression because of our sins, that we realize the depth and the weightiness of our sins and what must be done to atone for them. You know, we're grieved. We're grieved by the fact that we've sinned against God. Even sins of ignorance we're grieved by, that we've done things against His ways. This is generally interpreted to be as fasting, and I believe that this is a somewhat accurate way to interpret this. I believe it's further confirmed in Isaiah 58. You see a lot of discussion over the feast, and it references fasting quite a bit. The idea is just that we're so upset by the sins that we've done that we can't eat, we can't drink, we can't do anything because we need to be right with God, and we're crying out to Him that He would atone for us, He would forgive us, that these sins would be wiped away. Something else that's really interesting, I find, is that this Hebrew word anah, which means afflict, is the same as another word, a Hebrew word, anah, which means to sing, and even specifically to sing praises, to worship. For us as believers in Messiah, our sins have been atoned for. We have been forgiven. And so the Day of Atonement for us is not just being grieved and crying out over our own sins, but worshiping and singing out to God because He has forgiven our sins. This is spoken of in Hebrews 9. It speaks about first how the high priest would go in under the Levitical priesthood once a year to sprinkle the blood on the Day of Atonement, and how Messiah, being an even greater high priest, would go into the heavenly tabernacle and offer up His own blood to redeem us, to atone for our sins. So this is a day of afflicting our soul, of being grieved over our sins, and also the sins of our brothers and sisters. But it's also a day of rejoicing for us, of singing, because we have been forgiven. and when Messiah returns, this atonement will be made completely full. So there's not a whole lot else, I guess, for me to talk about as far as the basic observance of this feast day, other than just it's a day to afflict your soul, and it's a Sabbath rest. I believe that the interpretations of afflicting your soul as being fasting from food and from drink, fasting from other pleasurable things, marital relations. The idea is that it's just a very somber and serious day. This year, in 2014, the Day of Atonement will begin October 5th at sunset on Sunday and run through until October 6th at sunset on Monday. So I believe that is everything. If you have any other questions, feel free to send them to me and I will do my best to answer them. Shalom.